Okay, so here's the reality. Willowcrest. I guess we'll do this again. Turn left on Willowcrest. Got a lot of different stories. Let's go straight. Let's find out where the bikes would go. So as kids, we had bikes. So in Catnappers, how it works is, I turned too soon right here. In Catnappers, they're a clique of boys. I believe it's probably Jonah. Catnappers. A clique of boys hunt down an evil gang that are terrorizing neighborhood cats in Haltom City, Texas. I believe it's probably Jonah. It's the lead kid who probably represents me. And then you have Dijon, which is his outcast friend. Kind of maybe the slow one in a way. Well, just a unique artist kind of type. His grandfather was in World War II, and supposedly in the story he helped with constructing the nuclear bomb. Okay, that's his history. Jonah was just like a troubled kid that was in a split family, dealing with being in a divorced family. And then there was Birdnest Head, which is his nickname, and his friend Mike. There's Tourist right there. That looks very familiar. I think that was the right way. I remember Tourist. And after... Anyway, the other kid, Forrester, which represents a friend of mine that was fallen in the war. And we all ran around kind of like dressed up in ninja outfits. We also had bikes too, so we'd run around these bikes and stuff like that. And this Tourist leads the circular. Basically, in the story, these cats go missing. That's why it's called Catnappers. Like kidnap, but catnappers. They get napped. And in the story, we're trying to figure out as a group of boys, as a clique of boys, I call them, like almost not really a gang, but just like when you're a kid, when you're 12 years old or 13 years old, whatever, you hung out with a group. There's a story behind that house too, right there. And I got a story about this house too. Those houses got egged, by the way. Well, as kids, we would run around at night. Sometimes on bikes, sometimes just in ninja outfits. And this is the house that Catnappers starts off at, and this tree right here. I think I mentioned it's an oak tree. I don't think this is an oak tree. I changed it in the story. That's where we lived, right here, off Circular Drive. 5921 Circular. They've changed the house quite a bit. But you can see, this is the house that we were at. It's a skateboard at this house and all kinds of stuff. Well, we would climb the trees that are still partially there, right there. You can kind of see them, those trees, over that fence to escape the dogs. We'd go out the back of that house right there, the back window, and run through the back yard until we would get to those trees. And then we would use the trees to sling over the fence. Also, that house right there got egged big time. One time the police even got called, and we had to go in and scrub all the eggs off that house right there. Pretty funny. So the group of kids, they usually would take this route, up this road, right up this way, on the bikes. I got many stories about this road in my past life too. I had a friend that lived there too. Not my past life, but in my past, in my past. Knew someone there. They would get egged too. I even got into a wreck one time when I was about 16, about right here. I was sliding. It was very wet outside, and I slid right into another car right there. Also, a friend of mine from Hip Pocket lived in that house too. I think his name was Bob. Anyway, regardless, as kids in the story, we would go down this way. So they were looking for the people that were kidnapping these cats. And at the time, the rumor was there was these satanic worshiper people that would kidnap cats and kill them in sacrifices. So the kids go and look for these types, and They go with fireworks and Chinese stars and all this stuff. And this is the area that supposedly they hung out. Now, I have a true story that one time my stepdad and everybody, we were walking. There's Fossil Creek. As you can see, it's kind of spooky. But there's a spooky area right over here. But this is where it took place. And we would go and look for them. And there's a couple stories that I think may have been in the actual short story. One story was we were walking through the woods through this way. And we came here on the shoulder of this road right here. And I'll show you what this truck did. I was standing there and I had a trench coat on. I wore like a trench coat when we were younger. And this is like way before like Columbine and all that kind of stuff. We were like maybe 11 years old or 12. And I was standing right here and my friends were kind of behind me. It was late at night, maybe like 1 o'clock. Even my stepdad was with us. In the story, I don't think he is. And the truck did this. It just stopped and turned its lights on, right? Just like that. And stopped and pointed the lights right at me for a very long time. And I just stood there for a very long time, frozen. Well, my stepdad and all my friends and stuff like that, they just ran off. And I stood there just looking at the truck. I think that might have been in this story. They ran off this way into the woods. Then eventually I walked off into the woods and the truck just drove away. Now my mom and my stepdad were walking down this road right here and they saw a bunch of people one time in the middle of the day wearing like cards, Scarborough Fair looking kind of people. They were wearing like Renaissance outfits and some were dressed up as cards, like a deck of cards. They were all in a circle and they were like having a seance, like right there in that field. True story. That's part of probably in Catnappers as well. We also used to play Borderlands there, and Catnappers is called, I believe it's called Wonderlands. But it was a game that was like live action Dungeons and Dragons. We actually really did do that. Anyway, that's kind of some of the parts of Catnappers. But in aspects, they never really find these supposedly satanic worshipers that are killing cats. They never really find them, but they find some spooky people around town. And I think there's a scene at the gas station where the guy where Jonah sees this guy wearing, like he has these tattoos on. So they have assumptions that they're somewhere around, but they never really find them. But they do find like an abandoned kind of like hut that's been taken over by somebody, and there's an oil lamp in it. And there's a scene where he goes in and they try to make a decision on whether they're going to stay or go, and there's like pentagrams and stuff like that in this abandoned hut, and they think they may have found the catnappers. And then they come across this couple. They don't really know it's a couple, but it's someone walking in the back part of the woods, kind of in that area that I was, right there where I was going through the trees. And they decide to set off fireworks amongst them. I mean, they sent the fireworks over their heads and throwing them at them, the kids do, thinking that they're the catnappers. And they just turn out to be a regular couple walking their cat and dog or something. I think in the story they're walking a cat and a dog. Anyway, you got to read the story. I'm proud of that story. I've done a reading of it. It is set all in this area of Haltom City. And Catnappers is kind of my homage to Stephen King's The Body, which was turned into a movie called Stand By Me, which is a great, brilliant movie, but also, I think, one of the best short stories or novellas about children in the 1950s growing up in the Dexter area of Maine, which I've actually been to. I've lived in Maine and stuff like that. I think Stephen King's story is probably one of the best stories that's ever been chronicled of that era. Okay, this is not of the 1950s. Okay, this is not coming out of a group of the boomer generations. This is a story coming out of a group of Generation X at a young age. Okay, it's not the same, and it doesn't feel the same. It doesn't have the same dialogue. It doesn't have the same plot structure. It's got missing links in it. It's debogulated, or whatever word I want to use there. It's not a story that's supposed to have the structure of a story that maybe Stephen King would write. It has its own structure and its own way of telling the story. At times it's repetitive. I get very kind of detailed about the things that the kids have and stuff like that. But this is where it takes place. So I can remember the story in my head. And it's written down. There's some misspelling words and stuff like that. It's not like perfect grammar, but it's enough to be able to be told. And I'm proud of that story. Anyway, this is the long road that we kind of, or the spooky road that we would call, that's in Catnappers. Now, Fossil Creek is right over this way, which takes place, I didn't change the name of Fossil Creek, I used the real name there, but I did change the name of the kids. Like, for example, DeJean, his real name was Sean. Jonah, that my real name is actually Jonathan, and I went by Jonah in the story, or I go by Jonah in the story. They go into this area, which should have a baseball field right here. And the baseball field is in the story, and it's still there today. And it looks very similar. There's the bleachers. And there was a wasp nest that's in the story too, which on the other side is where they keep probably the equipment for the, here it is, it's right there, straight ahead. There used to be a horrible wasp nest that was always there every summer. And beyond that area right there, which is the ballpark, is the Fossil Creek trails, which lead to a river. And that's what the kids would explore at night. And that's what we would do. So it is autobiographical. This is really cool that this is actually still here. You can see the lights up this way, right up this way. You can see lights right over here. I would love to go back and revisit a lot of this. Maybe even with the story too. My dream is to maybe make a movie of it one day, if any filmmaker production company is brave enough. You'll look here though, I don't remember these, but these are all rocks right here. Looks like they put them here. You can't really see. These are all rocks all along this way. And there's that open field, which is actually in the story, in the moment of the story. All right, I gotta head back. But this is like a really cool kind of area. You can see some of the rocks this way. And this is probably a trail. Yes, this is part of it right here. This is a big parking lot for ball games right here. But this is the Fossil Creek Mysteries, which is in Catnappers. And that's probably like a regular dead end kind of thing. It is a spooky area, like what's that car doing here on Super Bowl night? But that's been blocked off, like right there. I don't know if that's always used to be there. But this is probably one of the fields that I talk about. It was mostly probably fields when I was younger, and they've turned it into kind of like a parking lot. But this was mostly like just a big field right here, just like the other field adjacent across the river. And there's the hill that I talked about that the kids would go down right here. It looks like a movie set to me. To me, it looks like there could be a movie done here. And here's the hill that goes up, which is on Bewley, I believe. Tourist, you take a right on Tourist and you run to Circular. And that's mostly the clique, the area the kids would be at. That's Bewley, B-E-L-E-Y. Just to let you know, my friend had a miniature ramp, because we were skaters too at one time, down this way. But anyway, that's the story that I wrote. So, have a good night. So I have a lot of stories about Haltom, but this is Haltom Live. That's what it's called, the theater. I was way off, but anyway, it's Haltom Live, and this is where they show some original movies. They usually, in a lot of cases, they show like local artists, and it's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool little theater. It's got a marquee and all this stuff, and this is right here in Haltom. Haltom is actually a pretty cool little place, believe it or not. There's a little catnapper walking around with a hood on. So like a catnapper would be like a druid looking kind of person or whatever, you know, like a person that looks like they hold seances or something, you know, or weirdos, you know. But it's borderline Christian story, even though I'm talking about maybe a possible satanic cult that's out there, which who knows if there are. But you know, the kids go looking for them in a brave way because they care about their local cats, especially Miss Kitty, which is Jonah's favorite cat, which does die later on in the story, and it's a hard story to kind of dealt with. It's an emotional moment of losing your pet. Everybody cries during those times. But Jonah actually loses the cat, which is known as Princess, who gets supposedly hit by a car. There's tire marks on the cat, on the fur, like dark, kind of oily residue on the fur. He doesn't know if a dog maybe got a hold of the cat, or if the cat, was hit by a car, which is causing the cat to not be able to breathe any longer. And it's the first time that Jonah ever deals with actual, like death, or seeing death, or being aware that death takes you and it's a place you don't come back from. And he has to let the cat go. This was actually, I think, an Asian town back in the day. They sell like Asian seafood there. But I'm proud of the story. I believe in the story. I just talked to Linda just a moment ago. I thought, you believe in something, and you keep kind of, pushing for it over and over again. According to science and nature and the way the world works, persistence does win in the end. Because persistence always leads to something called perseverance. They're two different things. You persist and you persist and you persist, and the next thing you know, you enter into what's known as perseverance, which leads to that, which is called a green light. You can barely see Fort Worth from right over this way. Regardless, that's my thing on Catnappers, the novella that I wrote under my pen name known as Ash Cole.